We have a little bit of a military presence down in North Carolina, and we've got down in at Fort Bragg. My wife is taking on a cause called baby bundles. So we get, ironically, about 9 months after a major deployment, we have a lot of babies born down at Womack, and what we've done is created, this baby bundle support for new families. And it's amazing to me, when you get personally involved in that, this is going into our third year, you see how undermet the needs are of these young families and single military personnel. So I want to talk just briefly on child care. What are the services doing to expedite the process for employee background checks?
So I can address this, and I appreciate the concern you have for our soldier family members, and I appreciate the outreach that you do with you and your wife, and that is well received by our family members down at Fort Bragg, sir, so thank you. This is a huge concern for us. One of the key things that enable our family members and a lot of our spouses to seek employment is child care. It is the #1 resourced function within MWR in the United States Army by size and scope, and it's critical to our success, and it's something we have to continue to invest in for the future. We experience backlog for several reasons. First and foremost, we need additional space. So it's a MILCON issue, and we need to seek resources to meet the adequate needs of our soldiers at our major installations. Second is the one that you described, sir. It's a backlog of employment. So we've been working this very hard. I think we've done an okay job at reducing that amount of backlog, but it's compounded by the simple problem that people often don't want to wait for those background checks, and they need to seek employment. We're working very hard through our individuals that conduct backlog to continue to reduce that, and we're allowing our soldiers who we can't meet their needs on post, we're allowing them to use funds in order to seek equal opportunities for them to seek child care off post by offsetting the costs.
Unless the other gentlemen have an adjustment to that, I'd like to expand the question just a little bit, and you can go back and add on to what Sergeant Major said, and that would be, have you looked at fully supervised provisional approval so that you can start addressing the backlog and making sure that we have adequate child care services for our soldiers?
In the Marine Corps, sir, we've committed more adjudicators to the process, and today we don't have a backlog, a wait for employment in our child care process. What we are experiencing is the outside community have adjusted the age, and they're taking on kids that are 4 years of age, and that's causing employment to go elsewhere. So when that backlog was there, we had employers leaving, and now it's more competitive to get them to come on base with the salary that the government pays child care providers. That's the problem we're having now.
Anything to add on the subject? They also kind of interested in something. We're going to have to submit a number of questions for the record on these topics. One that I'd like to talk about in my remaining time is what initiatives the service lines have taken to expand employment opportunities for military spouses. And we'll start with Mr. Giordano.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I may, in regard to the spouse employment through the child care facilities, our Navy has approximately 237 CDCs, child development centers, and youth centers across the globe. And we do, from a spouse employment perspective, we allow our spouses the opportunity to basically operate in any of those CDCs. So if a service member PCS and gets to another location that has a CDC, that spouse's credentials automatically translate to that other CDC, and they are guaranteed employment into that other location, which has yielded great benefit and removes a little bit of stress for those providers inside the facilities, which also allows for increased capacity because of the number of providers that can easily come on board inside those facilities.
Well, thank you. We'll submit these so we get consistent answers from each of the lines of service here. Thank you.
And in regard to the spouse employment piece, and as you mentioned, my wife was with me, so she's very. I'll share a story with you. So my wife is a registered nurse, and her license across the state lines has changed a number of times throughout the years, and it presents challenge for her for every time she's got to get a new license and pay for that licensing. And I know that we've taken great steps to try to mitigate that in the services, working with our Department of Labor and our state processes, and we appreciate all those efforts. But the bigger challenge is probably the overseas locations, when our spouses are looking for that employment overseas, and they're restricted by the status enforcement agreements and things of that nature that might limit those employment opportunities. So I think that the biggest struggle in this is those employment opportunities in overseas environments and what we can do to try to help mitigate those.